82.
Yeah, I think had the feeling when we left the bench, was pretty clear from what we watched, that we were a real good defensive team last night, played hard. I think generated enough for sure. I think there's more we can do with that, but yeah, I would take that game replicated over and over.
And you guys were able to get a lot of pressure, it seemed like, in the offensive end, too.
Yeah.
Did you like the way that built over the course of the game?
I thought there was 50 minutes of that game that we were really strong. I thought it was a flat 10 minutes in the second period. I don't think either team really got a whole heck of a lot, but other than that, we were good.
Three new deep pairs. How impressed were you just with the poise all the new guys showed in the back end? I mean, the high danger stuff was really not there.
Yeah, I thought the forwards worked really hard to give the defense a chance to be good. A little different speed element tomorrow night, so it'll look differently. But the forwards worked very hard for our defense last night.
Mackie, we saw a little bit of the third on that line now in practice on the second line.
Yeah.
What do you think about him moving up?
It's his offensive style. I think he's got some really nifty plays that he can make. A2 is so strong down the middle, creating a forecheck for us, and Matthew clearly around the net can be pretty dynamic. It's just a different look. It was where I originally had him prior to the injury to Sam Bennett, and then we'll put him back there.
You told us during training camp that this essentially wasn't going to look easy, that your players need to learn being comfortable in uncomfortable situations. Yeah. How do you best approach that?
Well, the whole idea is you're trying to build a game that you have a chance to win within the playoffs, and if you can play that game, it'll give you the best chance of getting there first. We had, I would say, considerably wild swings in style of hockey last year, I thought, in the first 4 months, even in games, and I think I probably said it to you 100 times. I liked pieces of our game an awful lot. But from January 2nd on, we were far more consistent. We had a few aberrations, but for the most part, we played a pretty good, consistent game of hockey, and I think we should be in a position to do that now. It may not look like, if you take the top two offensive defensemen off any team's lineup, right, it's going to look a little bit different. But we put up 41 last night, and we had enough chances to win that game.
Paul, just big picture, how do you recapture the emotion, intensity, or can you, in October hockey versus the wild ride that you guys went on?
Well, that emotion's driven almost in some ways from the outside. You get into, we were 9 points out at one time, so it's an emotion that was driven by, we were in desperation mode for 3 months, and then the playoff is just, you're right, I don't think it can be recreated. So but the style of game can be. It's nearly as physical. I think in the first Boston game there were 83 hits, and I think they were all real. Like, it was incredibly physical. So that's not what regular season hockey. You can't play it for 82. There'd be nothing left of these guys. So, but the style of game. A good decision in the playoffs is still a good decision now, and that's really what our goal is to play a game that we can replicate.
And for the guys that are back this year that went through that, I guess that's the ultimate motivator. They don't need that motivation. They know what it took to get there, and no doubt would like to get back there.
They felt it, right? It was an incredible run, but an incredible grind, and so they learned in that process. We have big turnover here, we've got a lot of new faces in our lineup, and some of it's injury based, but so getting the new guys on board to a style of game is made easier. The two captains that are in our lineup, Barkov and Tkachuk, had great success in that style of hockey. They believe in it, so they are fantastic and exemplary leaders in the style of game that we play.
Speaking of leaders, would be remiss if I didn't ask you about one of the big developments off-season for the Jets, which is Adam being the captain. You obviously got to see Adam kind of really evolve and mature.
Yeah.
I take it you were probably pretty happy with that choice.
It's almost not as much a choice as it was, I would say, obvious. Yeah. He is clearly the captain. It's so much more than what happens on the ice. It's what happens in the room. It's an adherence to style of play. It's like our guy being an example for the game that the Winnipeg Jets want to play. I mean, he's an honest, hard player that commands respect from his daily activity on the ice. He prepares well. He plays hard every night. He'll do hard things for his team. So I was really, really happy for him. I think it was a very clear and very good choice.
And last piece of business with your old team, but of course, big news this week with
Yeah.
Mark and Connor. You once, predicted they'd build a statue of Mark around here, and I guess that's a possibility now because he's probably going to finish his career here.
Yeah, both incredible players around the league, and I think very fitting for the entire culture that's built here, from ownership down, about embracing the city, valuing the opportunity. This is a special place. Winnipeg is. It's not like any other market in the league. It's a small market team that had lost their team. And the people that come here fall in love with the place, and the fans embrace the players, but the players will embrace the fans. Every team loses players to free agency. We did, right? We live in a very sunny climate. We lost players to free agency. That happens. It's not a statement. But what you're seeing here is, the Adam Lowrys, but Mark and Connor. I think they've always been committed to it. I really do. I wasn't surprised that they signed. And it's a great thing for the franchise because it keeps that theme together.
Well, from the aspect you just talked about, how unique this market is, so you having been through many a home opener and some of them very memorable during your time here, how special will it be for your team to be a part of that this early in the year? Nothing compares to the Stanley Cup playoffs or the finals, but this time of the year to get that motivation, to get that juice.
It's the earlier question was about how do you recapture the emotion of playoff hockey. Well, you can't until you come into a building like this. So I think we're going to hit 2 or 3 home openers this year, and it's great. It gets the energy right. Always special in this building. Probably a lot of white in the building tonight or tomorrow night, and those are the games you want to play in. As many loud buildings on the road as you can. You get used to it, because that's exactly what it can be. A surprise. I mean, we ran through Boston, Toronto, Carolina, Vegas. They're all really loud buildings, and by the time you get halfway through, you get used to it. So you want your team to play in front of loud buildings. The experience was completely different. In Carolina, we did get hot right at the end, and we were actually a really good team for about 4 or 5 months. From January 2nd on, we were a good hockey team. So, and we're still young here. Sasha Barkov is just coming into his prime, right? So when you look at the center iceman, that's true of Sam Bennett. Lundell's going into his 3rd year in the league, whatever, he's 21, 22 years old. So this team is still learning and still coming into its prime. So we had almost an identical training camp to last year. It was very, very hard. And we can measure the load on these players now. And it was hard because they pushed harder than they did last year. So that was the first sign. This is a good bunch of men. They work really hard at their game. So it was a different environment for me. All I wanted to make sure is that training camp was in no way casual or even a little like it was. I didn't need to push them harder than last year, but it couldn't have been easier. So we went hard. They pushed themselves harder. So I like where we're at.